All right, we're about to dive deep into one of the wildest, darkest theories lurking on the internet. It's this belief that the world's elite aren't just pulling the strings, but that they're following a secret and frankly horrifying menu. We're going to break down what this theory claims, and then we'll see what happens when we try to reimagine that whole myth for the modern world.
I mean, really think about that for a second. What if? This theory proposes that's exactly the case. It claims that for some hidden ruling class, their real power, the very source of their control, comes from a diet that is, well, it's unimaginably dark. So let's break this thing down.
First up, let's talk about the core of the whole theory, this so-called secret menu. And look, this isn't about expensive wines or rare truffles. According to the people who believe this, the cuisine of the powerful is far more specific.
And there it is, right at the heart of it all. The theory alleges that this isn't just some gothic fantasy novel plot. No, it's a metabolic necessity for a supposed non-human ruling class. But why blood? And what kind?
And here's where the theory builds its own kind of dark, twisted logic. See, it's not just any blood. Proponents claim that the best source comes from people who are experiencing intense fear. The thinking is that the adrenaline, that fear hormone that's released during terror, well, it supposedly makes the blood more potent, more nutritious for their unique metabolism. And the alleged ways they consume it range from, drinking it directly to absorbing it through the skin during these secret ceremonies. So, this brings us to a key ingredient in this dark pantry. It's a substance you might have heard whispered about in the murkier corners of the web: adrenochrome. Okay, so let's ground this in reality for just a moment. Adrenochrome is a real chemical. It's what forms in your body when adrenaline oxidizes or breaks down. Now, while it's been studied for different medical reasons, it has absolutely no scientifically proven psychedelic or life-extending properties. But in the world of this theory, that scientific reality is just the beginning of the story. And here's the twist. The theory hijacks this real chemical and transforms it into some kind of mythical elixir of life. It claims that adrenochrome, when harvested at its absolute peak, is basically a fountain of youth and a source of immense power. And to get that highest concentration, the source, a human, has to be pushed to the absolute peak of terror. This provides the sinister, twisted reason for the cruelty at the heart of this whole narrative. So, if adrenochrome is the main course, how is it served? Well, the theory claims it's not just a simple meal, oh no, it's an elaborate ceremony. The whole method is laid out like some kind of dark sacrament. The timing is supposedly tied to the lunar calendar, the guest list is super exclusive, only reptilians and their most loyal human followers. The venues are supposedly places of historical power. And of course, it's all concealed behind the familiar names of secret societies, which act as a convenient cover for these, horrifying feasts. Just when you think it couldn't get any stranger, the theory adds this whole metaphysical layer. It claims the diet isn't just physical. There's a belief that this hidden power is looming over humanity, feeding not just on our bodies, but on our very emotions, like psychic vampires. And this is where the theory goes global. It basically reframes all of mass human suffering as a kind of farming. Global crises, political division, widespread panic. In this worldview, these aren't just tragic historical events. They're deliberately engineered projects to generate a feast of negative energy. Your fear, your anger, your despair, it's literally their food. Okay, so we've explored the really disturbing claims of this theory. But to understand its strange appeal, let's just try an experiment. Let's strip away the conspiracy and look at the core archetype it presents, the ultimate predator. What if we reimagine that idea, not as a dark ritual, but as a modern, fictional dietary philosophy designed for peak performance? So here's the shift in perspective. On one hand, you have the grotesque claim of drinking adrenalized blood for power. But on the other, we can create a symbolic reinterpretation. We're asking, if we took the idea of a supreme predator and translated it into a diet for optimal human performance, what would that menu actually look like? So this is how this fictional menu could break down. The first principle, hunter metabolism, is all about high-protein, low-carb foods, a classic predator's diet. Then, thermal energy adds spicy foods, inspired by this idea of a cold-blooded being needing to find internal heat. Mineral density focuses on grounding earthy elements like bone broth. The diet would also be really selective about plants, preferring bitter and aromatic herbs. And finally, kind of echoing the theory's paranoia, there's a mind-food connection principle.
which means avoiding so-called mind-controlling modern foods like excess sugar and ultra-processed junk. So, we've journeyed from a really dark conspiracy to a creative dietary concept. What does all of this actually tell us? If you strip away all the bizarre details, this theory taps into a really old idea that what we eat fundamentally changes us, not just physically, but mentally, even spiritually. Whether it's a forbidden fruit in a garden or a superfood promising enlightenment, we have always given our diets a powerful, deeper meaning. And that's really the big takeaway here. The myth is extreme, of course, but the question it accidentally forces us to think about is universal. In what ways do our food choices define our health, our energy, and maybe even our identity? It's something to think about.